Welcome to MAP, the bi-weekly market access podcast hosted by me, Dr. Stefan Walzer. I am the innovator of Market Access 4.0 and a health economist by training and working in the fields of market access, reimbursement, pricing, and health economics since 2004. Discover Market Access 4.0 and unveil the future with our innovative solutions. Max Insights, our fast and easy AI-based reimbursement planning platform. Dobo, our new revolutionizing way of creating reimbursement dossiers across the globe with the first and only dossier writing AI bot. Cubo, our new AI-based objection handling platform. And Waffle, train with Waffle's virtual reality genius in an immersive environment and with an AI-based counterpart. We are Market Access 4.0. So check out our website, marketaccess4-0.com. And now let's dive into the current discussions, processes, and trends in market access across the globe. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Access podcast. Today we have, I think, one of the hottest topics currently ongoing in the industry, which is artificial intelligence. But we're no more speaking generally about which tools are available, what could be done, etc. But we also want to hear what and how industry maybe sees that topic. For that, I have a special guest. Welcome, Elizabeth Shanahan from Sanofi. Whoever does not know you yet, I think it would be great if you could just very quickly introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Stefan. So I'm Elizabeth Shanahan, or most people call me Lizzie. I am the AI strategy lead in the Global Access Catalyst within Sanofi. So we are a transversal department who support all of our business units on kind of key strategic priorities, one of which is obviously digital and AI, which is what we're talking about today. So specifically, I lead our work streams looking at all the AI to support value evidence. So really anything to do with evidence, evidence generation, management, etc., within the market access and health economics processes. So delighted to be here and excited to have the conversation about this topic.
Perfect. Very good. So I think that's also, the key listeners we normally have around that kind of area and arena. So it would just generally be good. I mean, you just said you're basically really in the middle of digitalization, AI, and the whole kind of market access, health economic functions. So maybe not the why, but where has Sanofi seen already, or maybe identified, if it's maybe a bit too early, real world value creation through AI in market access? I'm not speaking about real world evidence, but just more where you see the kind of benefits for maybe people in the functions, in the responsible areas of market access.
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of different areas. So at a kind of corporate level, Sanofi has been very vocal about wanting to be an AI-powered pharmaceutical company. We have a strong AI ambition coming down from our leadership from our CEO, Paul Hudson, and our Chief Digital Officer, Emmanuel. So I think in terms of some of the pieces that I know our teams are using on a regular basis, we have what we are deeming snackable AIs, which are things like Copilot. We have an internal Copilot that we can use, which is extremely useful just on a day-to-day basis for just tasks, crafting emails, managing communication plans, all the things that we now, a lot of us outsource to those sort of agents on a daily basis. And I think those have become very, very well embedded across the organization, not just within market access and HEVA, but I see that being used. And one of the things, so that's on a very basic level, we are also starting to look at how we can do more sophisticated prompting with those agents to actually start for those, Copilot style conversational agents to actually start to help us with doing some of our more specific functional work. So, for example, we've had presentations from some of the country teams about using Concierge to actually develop our code for building models, for example, within the health economics team in Germany, which again is a great example of that. Or, using it to condense environmental information or changes in the market access environments that you see across, different countries or globally. We're seeing some uses in that space. So I think, the great thing is we're seeing strong adoption of that, which is good. And I think that comes from those kind of agents being used widely outside of work by a lot of us, as well as now people are starting to think about those applications inside of work. So that's at quite a general level. And then as we drill down into more of the specific areas, and the kind of two areas that we look at particularly are pricing, and I have a couple of colleagues in our pricing team who support with specifically the AI around that, and they're doing a number of initiatives there. And then on my side, the kind of value evidence, which is kind of everything that's not pricing, I suppose, in terms of, publications data, clinical data, etc. And we're looking, I think the way we have tried to approach our mindset in the kind of value evidence framework is thinking more about, not applying AI as an icing to cover up a badly made cake, is how I phrase it. Yeah. But actually looking at the processes that we've got, which currently are sometimes very manual. They have been very well established and are often related to or aligned to HTA requirements or regulatory requirements, but actually is taking a step back, looking at those processes with fresh eyes, with the capabilities that we have now with AI, and saying, okay, if we took apart that process, where do you put AI into that to make it faster, more efficient, cheaper, and really free up our team's time so that we can use our team's resources and expertise in a more strategic way? Because, there are some tasks, for example, screening of papers as part of a literature review search is an extremely manual process right now and takes an awfully long time for somebody to read it, every paper, decide whether they're going to include it or not. You've got to do that abstract level and full text level. If we can get an AI to help with some of that, manual work, repetitive work that takes a lot of time and effort from a individual within our team, then we can actually, if an AI does it, we can free up their time to think, okay, they can be more strategic in the use of their time. So that allows them to do literature review faster. So then they can be more thinking about actually what other evidence do we need to find? What other searches or literature reviews might we need to do? Freeing up time for that more strategic thinking. So that's how we're really thinking about the use of AI currently. So there's the kind of snackable general stuff, and then there's the more expert stuff in our function.
This is really a great kind of insight already. Let's see how you also deal with it. I mean, if I get it correctly, I think there is also probably a big cultural shift which has happened in the past. I mean, just following you, I would just generally think, how I just heard it now, right? That at least the majority of people within your company would be already thinking, how could we potentially lever the benefits of AI in our day-to-day work, right? Because I personally believe that the culture shift is the first thing, because otherwise you really need to go step by step. But I think you have probably gone already a couple of those steps. So you're, at least in market access, what I hear is rather we are trying now to really evolve further. So we have had processes, they might be good, they might have been successful in the past, but let's have a look how to optimize those with the new tools like AI, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've seen, I came into this role a little over a year ago, having been off for a year on maternity leave. And, I think I was doing a number of digital, we weren't calling them AI because AI wasn't a buzzword before then, but, there were digital projects. We were looking at some different models, etc. And, this was a kind of a niche topic I had an interest in. I kind of was given a bit of my time, capacity to have a little bit of a play around with some of these things, but it wasn't a core part of everybody's thought process. Yeah. Fast forward a year later when I came back and came into this role, and I really saw a shift in the mindset of how digital and now AI are being embedded within everything that we do. And I think, even the capabilities of things like, our internal copilot concierge, when I came back, it was clunky. It had hallucinations. It wasn't very sophisticated. I was kind of going, I don't know if this is actually going to ever add any value, but actually they've done a huge amount of development work. And now I'm using it on a daily basis, as is almost everybody in Sanofi. So I think you're right. It's that culture shift. And it comes from, I think having the tools, but then people actually starting to see the value of them and use them and try them and test them. And I think once people get comfortable and have gone through that change curve, that's when you start to see it. But I think, and this is one thing we're very aware of with the projects that we're doing, is it's not just about developing. So it's about having a really clear use case, getting a product that's very aligned to that use case and making sure that it fits the needs of the team and that you are confident that you're going to deliver what the business needs. But even if you do all of that, if you don't prepare the landing of that product and manage how that product enters your teams and help them with the training and the learning and the change management and supporting the onboarding and the utilization of that tool, you will never see the value that you've written in your business case use case, because it will just sit and not be used, because it will be, for whatever reason, as to why it's not being adopted. So I think making sure people have that mindset that they're open to the change is really important, and also one of the biggest challenges.
No. I think that's a perfect explanation. I mean, I was just thinking, of course, you can always have that kind of top-down, maybe call it messaging, right? CEO, C-level kind of communication we want to be, which is great for a vision, but then you need to really bring that to life. And that's not always that easy, at least what we have seen as well in discussions. With some are more open-minded, even if they have been very successful for some of their role as of now, but they're open, let's say, to also try new things, right? To adapt basic AI. A lot of those people are, of course, as well open and use it already, as you said as well a bit earlier, in their day-to-day life already, outside of business maybe even, right? Mm-hmm. But the issue is still, how to get the individuals / the teams with you while you develop that kind of maybe a pilot or a trial version, then in order to expand it into your day-to-day life. I think that's probably the biggest challenge that had been the same probably with you, right?
Absolutely. And I think it is, but I don't think it's, although I now currently work in digital and AI for access, I've got a background in commercial, in managing commercial launches and launch excellence, as well as market access. So I would honestly say I don't think the approach to managing that is any different to managing any other big project or launch where you're trying to get people to buy in. You've got to keep them informed at every step of the process. Understand why this product, why what you're doing is going to add value to them. Why should they care? Mm-hmm. And then also make sure that you have set yourself up for success in the implementation, making sure that you're not just throwing the system out there and saying, get on with it. You need to provide training. And that doesn't just mean, once, twice. That probably means continual training that's available as teams change and as turnover happens. Ongoing support for, minor issues, on the day-to-day basis. And then also, continual checking back in with them to make sure, we've done this, it's all based on testing. You're normally doing it with a small number of one use case or a small number of examples. Does it scale? Yeah. Does it work? Once you start going from, 1, 2, 3 or 4, 5 projects to 40, 50, 100, 200, 500. Okay, well, those are different economies of scale. So, is the system still doing what you need it to do at that level? And or are people having issues? And this is where I think it also comes into, if you're working with external vendors, making sure that these are partnerships. We want to be making sure that if we are bringing in systems into our that support our processes within market access and health economics, that those systems have, teams behind them that work on development. We have a roadmap, an aligned roadmap. We have that ongoing support so that we can continually evolve the system. Because I think, back to the point you were making, Stefan, about, the culture change, but also there's the technical capabilities of what I can do in the 12 months I've been doing this. The capabilities of AI and LLMs is significantly improved. And that's 12 months. So, we don't know what the next 12 months to 5 years will bring, but we've got to keep ourselves at the forefront of the technology, but be the conduits with our teams to hold their hand as we go through that process.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. I mean, you mentioned already, of course, let's say different kind of project, the move into the day-to-day kind of business, etc. I mean, taking maybe 5 years from now, how would you generally see the day-to-day work of a market access, maybe health economist in the industry? I mean, we have done a lot, of course, you have as well gone through that kind of piece, a lot of, let's say, handwork, you just mentioned before, in system and lit search. I mean, this was for me at least a big pain point.
Yeah.
Writing dossiers. I mean, you can name a lot of different things, right? But the strategic bit, at least for me, was always very great, very insightful, was a lot of fun. It's still a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
But some of the step-by-step kind of things, the nitty-gritty kind of part, that was probably not so much my kind of piece, but I know that some other people like that as well. But how would that change overall? What is your vision of day-to-day work of market access, maybe in 5 years from now?
So I expect there to be, a much higher utilization of AI within some of those really manual processes. So, if we're talking about literature reviews, as you said, the screening, extraction, those kind of steps could absolutely be automated. Things like dossier writing, I would expect I don't have an expectation that an AI would ever be capable of fully drafting a dossier and, without a human checking it and being submitted to an HTA agency. But what I do envisage is a world where we have more structured evidence bases, where we collate our evidence requirements for a product or an indication or even, a therapeutic area. And we have a suite of AI tools that can support in doing all of the different functions and processes that we do over the course of a life cycle to build the value evidence base for a product, for its launch, and manage it in the post-launch and, later stages of the life cycle. And, those are things like literature reviews, but dossiers, because, you're thinking about if you've launched a product and if you've got to do a pediatric follow-on indication, having an AI dossier that's already can take your original dossier, translate it, refine the evidence down and give you a draft version for your pediatric submission could be, a huge, saving in terms of time and vendor costs. So I think that, that's the way I see it going. I think and I think that will bring huge advantages in terms of, freeing up people's strategic thinking time, because as you said, that's probably the most interesting, but it's also the most difficult piece. I think the only question mark I have in my mind is regarding how we continue to nurture development and talent as we start to give some of that more manual basic work to AI, because those are the foundational things that you do at the start of your career, right? They are the things that you have the slightly laborious tasks that you do to learn the processes to do it, and teaches you the methodologies that you need to follow and the way to review the evidence and the data, the way you construct your value propositions and your arguments. All of that is very, very foundational. And although we can train AI to do that, which is fantastic because that frees it up, my question is, for the next generation of access leaders and strategic thinkers coming through, how will they get that training? Because if you're giving it to an AI, where will they do that? Where will they bring? Because you have to learn it somewhere.
Exactly.
So, and I know this is a broader piece. There's some studies recently been published about the kind of, generations coming through who are coming through using, ChatGPT, Copilot for a lot of their schoolwork, coursework, university degrees. It's a different mindset, but actually does it impact their critical thinking?
I mean, actually, I think this is one of the big discussions I also had a couple of times already. I mean, the key part is not so much, let's say, how you and me are probably applying AI, because we have, as you said, we have had our experience in the past. So for us, it's also sometimes a bit what I tell more unexperienced people. Sometimes I just have the gut feeling that something is not 100% correct when I firstly read it. So I then just go in there and check a couple of small things, and then I just directly recognize, really redo it again or check that original reference or whatsoever. It's probably very similar to if a junior person submits or gives you something to review, right? It's you go through it, you have the experience, you're very critical around it, blah, 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 and then you can give it back in order to have then a final version. But the issue is, of course, we will as well, somewhere in the future, will move out of those roles naturally, right?
So hopefully someday we can retire, Stefan. Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. But then it's really the question. I mean, how could we, let's say, build up the kind of talents for the future? But I mean, something I had already an interesting kind of discussion. I think it was probably more somebody coming out of the medical part and area. I mean, he was more bringing in something like market access learning labs, which is, I mean, my kind of point was more, I can understand that, but that's probably more for bigger companies maybe doing it because they might have the resources and as well the time. Because what it really takes is time, right? You can learn those things, but you need to invest your time. AI can just simply do it faster. And Absolutely. I mean, if you're business driven, maybe, AI could just do the kind of stuff, at least in the short term, faster when you still have your experienced people. The issue is, of course, well, also for business thereafter, how could you make sure that whatever is being done and developed by AI is critically assessed, that whatever you submit is also the best for the company, for the product, from a strategic, from a technical, from whatever kind of perspective?
Absolutely. And I think this is where, one of the fundamental principles we're building our work off is keeping the human in the loop at all stages, so we are making sure that for those reasons, but also for the reasons of transparency, explainability, replicability, we've got to make sure that we're not building black boxes. We can see what we're doing. We can be transparent within internally, but also if we submit anything externally. So, we need to have a person check everything to make sure it makes sense. Because as you say, you can, if an AI, an AI hallucinates, it does. It's clever, but it's not perfect. So you need to be able to look at it, and you need to have a person to be able to read something through. And as you said, see that thing and think that doesn't make sense, or that looks wrong, or hang on a minute, that number doesn't look correct. So, and check where it all comes from. So I think that's a fundamental principle that we are building into everything that we do in terms of the use of AI.
Maybe moving a bit outside of the industry and maybe to the other side of our day-to-day work, how do you see payers reacting generally to the AI kind of revolution? I mean, whether internally or also how they basically see the kind of AI evolving into industry, but they of course need to assess somehow the kind of then AI supported documents, all the kind of like, how is that perception from a payer's perspective? Any experience you can share with us?
So I think, payers are just people like us. So, when we talk about, at the beginning, you were asking about how we're using AI, in terms of Copilot and more expert. It's the same for our payers. They're the same people. So they're using all of these resources and tools in their own world, in their personal lives, but also almost certainly in their professional life. So I think we have to be cognizant of that. We have to think they're just, they are the same as us. But when we're entering into, formal negotiations or submissions with them, I think the experience I've had to date has been that they are very They know that AI is here. They understand. They appreciate that, as you would expect, pharma is probably an industry is maybe a little ahead of them in its development of it. And therefore they understand they need to get ready. And you see that with, NICE's statement regarding the use of AI, the FDA, been some commentary from HAS, the GBA, etc., which is great. And I think they're open to the discussions, which is really important. What I think, we need to do in those discussions, though, is we need to be, as an industry, transparent about where we're planning to use AI, what our tools look like, how we are developing them, and what our mindset and methodologies are. But I think we also need to push payers to say, how are you using AI? We need an equal level of transparency from them on where they're using AI. Are they using LLMs anywhere? Are they working with vendors to do some parts of the evidence assessment or model checking, or reviewing of the dossiers? How are they implementing it? And can we see their methodology? Because again, we don't want to, and we should not be building black boxes as industry, in my opinion. But I don't think payers or HTA bodies should be using black box methodologies either. I think it needs to be fully transparent. And I think my concern is that, as industry, we are very fortunate to have a lot more people and a lot of experience and the resources available to us to build these models. We have technical experts in Sanofi and our digital team who can support us with all of this. We have procurement individuals who can set up the contracts in the right way. A lot of HTA bodies, particularly smaller ones, do not have those kind of resources. So how can we make sure that they are being transparent, that they are have the right contracts are in place with them, if they work with vendors, to make sure that they have transparency in the methodology, and that anyone that asks for it can have access to it? Are they set up for success in these conversations? Because otherwise, I think, if we don't think about this now, we could end up in some very awkward conversations.
Yeah, no. I think awkward is one thing, but maybe even in legal kind of debates, right? Because I fully agree. I think that was the first thing what I had in mind when I saw the announcement a couple of weeks ago with the FDA using ELSA as a kind of internal assessment by AI, which is generally okay, right? But nobody knew basically. And still, I think, which kind of method, which LLM, how do they use it? We all need to sign a lot of different confidentiality agreements. If you're an employee, if you basically work with somebody else, outside, inside, whatever, you need to sign a lot of documents in order to have everything in a secure and safe way. At the same time, you need to be somewhat transparent to your external stakeholders, where payers are one, right? But if you just turn that around, I think that's the other kind of key component. But I think that's also important to understand from all sides. I think somehow we need to have this kind of transparency. We're using X, Y, Z. And probably, I think, until a given point, we should also be able to be transparent, showing exactly what we're doing methodologically. And then I think we're talking about different kind of points. Because then, of course, you could as well just move that a bit further. When I discussed it with another AI visionary, he as well just said, look, if you continue that thinking, you're probably ending up in an AI from the industry speaking with an AI from the payer side, and they do everything on their own, right? I probably don't agree fully, but maybe this is the far, far future as well. I don't know.
I think that that makes me uncomfortable, you saying that,
agreed.
Stefan, I'll be honest. Because again, one of our principles is human in the loop, right? And I think also it's a little reductive to say an AI. This is why I think my expectation is a suite of AIs. Yeah. And I think we're also going to go through a curve, on vendors. There are, startups there. At the moment, it's a little of the Wild West out there. Everybody is filling my inbox and my LinkedIn with, I can do AI for you, faster, cheaper, everything is AI. And we'll go through the process, and natural attrition will mean that some tools will meet the criteria and develop and will converge, and we'll end up with, more standardized systems. And I kind of expect that to happen in 5 years, but I don't ever expect to get it to one AI to do everything from an industry perspective or from a payer perspective. And I hope not, that it doesn't end up like that, because frankly, we won't all have jobs if that's the case.
Agree.
But I do expect them to be more integrated into it. But as I say, that's where, if we can start whilst we're in these early, phases and proof of concepts and test and learn, let's build it in the right way with our payers so that we can have the transparency.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think that was a bit, also a bit strange to hear. I mean, I know where that person was coming from. I mean, that person was more really doing AI since many years. So it was not so much adopting in different industries and whatsoever. And, maybe in some areas that might be true, but I think we're in a very specific arena as well. I think that's as well something to consider. But I think maybe just to end the really great discussion here, you are now in that role. And I mean, you see as well what is happening maybe also around or beyond maybe market access in your company. What is the top recommendation for somebody who is now just starting that endeavor, maybe in a mid-sized company where they just say, we need to do AI, but what is the key thing they should really follow in order then to be successful?
I think it comes back to what I said at the very beginning. My personal view is, as I said, my inbox and LinkedIn feed are full of everybody telling me how they can selling me AI. Don't start there. Start with your process. Start with your methodology, because although we have a set standard, relatively standardized methodologies that we follow in market access and health economics, they are individualized to the company. So look at your own individual processes, understand how your teams are doing that today, understand where the pain points are, and then think about and work with individuals who can help you to identify where AI could or could add improvements. And again, I use those both quite deliberately, because there are some areas where AI can immediately, but there are some emerging areas as well. And the question is, where do you want to explore? Because you need to think, AI moves and the technology is moving at such a pace, give it 6 months and you could well be at that point, and build your integration of AI based on that, rather than, as I said, if you just start layering it over like a thick piece of icing to try and fix your problems, it's going to fall through the cracks, because the cracks still exist in the process. So that would always be my key message to anybody who's starting on this journey. And also find someone who's very good. Find people or find a couple of individuals who really understand the technology, because that's where the magic happens. If you can understand your methodologies, your processes, how the access environment works, and if you can find counterparts who understand the digital space, who understand the software, and then you can work together, that's when you can really start to make significant gains.
Yeah, perfect. These were really great words to finish the conversation. Thanks a lot for all the insights. Thanks a lot for your thoughts. Looking forward to a quite interesting, exciting future with AI and market access. Thank you, Lizzie.
Thank you, Stefan.
Great insights by Liz Shanahan from Sanofi, how that company is basically evolving into as she called it, AI powerhouse, also in the area of market access. Interesting part where especially other companies can learn from is the cultural shift, which first needs to happen. I think that's clearly where I would also agree in what I have also seen in other companies. Firstly, people would need to think AI, which is then being the next step, how to best integrate it into the already existing method and or the processes. Maybe a good step was also, as she called it, kind of snackable AI, so little kind of AI solutions, tools, what people can really do and use day by day, for example, in order to improve or finalize their kind of emails and the like, and also other kind of small tools and gadgets. Whereas the next step is, of course, then rather bigger tools and solutions for processes, which is more around solving big pain points like in SLR or in writing, dossier writing and the like, before that is then also being integrated into the full process. Of course, and that's was also interesting, the discussion is around talent management. I think experienced, in our case, market access persons or health economists try and can deal and work with those AI tools and methods as they have gone through the step-by-step work and experience. So we are maybe especially also capable and able to find and review those kind of documents for issues and gaps. How that might evolve in the future with a younger generation, with the next generation of market access people and health economists, may be a question. As already mentioned, also discussed, is a suggestion like market access learning labs, but that might also take a bit of time. Anyhow, the AI move is ongoing. I think some companies are maybe some steps further ahead than others. Ultimately, it's more about learning. And I think the learning piece was also a key component when she was saying, look, we need to discuss and also be on a eye-to-eye level with payers. There's also payers, no surprise, obviously, are being driven by people. And they basically go through the same things as people within the industry. However, and ultimately, the key part also is there, transparency. So transparency, what is being used, how it's being used, and how this might then evolve again, even in those processes, meaning between different stakeholders. That was an episode of MAP, the Market Access podcast provided by Mars Market Access and Pricing Strategy, which is your healthcare consultancy in the German-speaking markets. MAP is available every second week with a new episode, so watch out. And in case you might have questions, contact me directly and or visit our website on www.marketaccess-pricingstrategy.de.